The life and work of Ibn Taymiyyah continue to fascinate many people today. And in this video, I'd like to read a short extract from this exciting new book, Ibn Taymiyyah on Reason and Revelation, by Professor Karl Sharif El-Tubki. He's an academic in the US, and one day, God willing, I will talk to him on blogging theology. Now, this book is based on his PhD dissertation, and perhaps unusually for PhD dissertations, is actually a fascinating read, and which I do recommend it. And I'll link to a free PDF copy of the book in the description below. The publishers are giving away a free copy of the work. It's amazing, really. So in the opening chapter of the book, the author sets the scene, both in terms of Ibn Taymiyyah's intellectual struggles and the wider cataclysmic events that were going on at his time. And we read, "It is the turn of the year 1300. The city of Damascus is filled with a heavy sense of foreboding. Where once the vibrant lights of civilization shone forth to illuminate the surrounding lands, a decidedly somber atmosphere now hung thickly over the deserted marketplaces and alleyways. Most of the city's inhabitants had already fled in horror before the impending cataclysm. The governors and intellectual elite had abandoned camp en masse as well, following their terrified populace south into Palestine, then farther down into Egypt, whose perpetually sunny skies had not yet been darkened by the chilly shadow cast by the gathering menace to the north. The land of Syria was under existential threat. Nowhere in the annals of the ancient metropolis had a more fateful day been recorded, for, perched along the northeast border of the city, ready to swoop down like a pack of vultures at the slightest nod from their redoubtable chief, camped the fearsome hordes of the sons of Genghis Khan." Sometime later, in the dungeon of the Citadel at Cairo, quite another battle was being waged. Having been sentenced to 1.5 years in prison for propagating allegedly anthropomorphic ideas surrounding the nature of God, an energetic, bold, and innately combative scholar and man of religion by the name of Taqi al-Din Ibn Taymiyyah scarcely seemed fazed by the fact that he was locked behind bars. As long as the prison wards continued to supply him with reams of paper and an ever-fresh supply of ink and pens, Ibn Taymiyyah could continue to fight a battle infinitely more consequential than the struggle against the Mongols in Syria. For if Damascus, one of the first of the illustrious external citadels of Islam, were to fall into hostile hands, then much was lost indeed. But if the internal citadel of faith itself were overrun, then all was lost, for the stakes here were nothing less than ultimate. The lines had been drawn long before Ibn Taymiyyah's day. Nearly 7 centuries had passed since the Prophet of Islam had brought into a chaotic world God's final message to mankind, a revealed book whose very words were those of God himself. The message in the early days had been clear and pristine. God was al-Haq, the ultimate reality, or the ultimately real. He was also al-Khaliq, the creator of the heavens and earth, and of everything they contained. God also had created man and had placed him on earth to worship his Lord and to work good deeds for as long as he might tarry. Man inexorably would one day taste death, whereafter God would raise him up again, body and soul, to judge him for the sincerity of his faith and the goodness of his works. So it was revealed to them in the book, and so did they believe in it, with their hearts as well as with their minds. Yet, over the centuries, the clear and unencumbered plains of God's holy word had slowly but steadily been encroached upon from beyond the horizon, and foreign troops had come to occupy many a Muslim thinker's mind. The mass translation of Greek and Hellenistic, medical, scientific, but especially philosophical texts into Arabic from the time of the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun in the early 3rd/9th century onward brought a host of new and strange ideas and modes of thinking into the Muslim intellectual landscape. The works on logic, metaphysics, and other disciplines by Aristotle and various Neoplatonic thinkers fascinated and enticed, yet also discomforted and repelled. For here was a sophisticated, brilliantly exposited view of the world, carefully elaborated over the course of centuries by some of the most brilliant minds the world had ever known. Provocatively, it was a view of the world, a vision of reality that pretended to far-reaching coherence and comprehensiveness, and that presented itself quite compellingly as based on, as growing out of, and as being derived from nothing less than reason itself. And what cause was there to worry? For does not the Quran itself, in numerous passages, beseech its followers to reflect, to ponder, to exploit their God-given intellects, to employ their minds, that perchance they might better fathom the purpose of their existence? Will they not then understand? Do they not consider the Quran with care? Perchance they may reflect. Yet what to make of it were one to comply with God's behest to use one's intellect, only to discover, unsettlingly, that what reason had delivered is somehow discordant with what God, creator of all things, including man and his intellect, had himself declared in Revelation. For the Greeks spoke of man as well. They too spoke of the heavens and the earth and of God. Reason, Aristotle tells us, perceives that God is a perfect being. Now, all may agree that God is perfect, but reason, Aristotle tells us further, judges that a perfect being must be, among other things, perfectly simple, indivisible, non-composite. So, while revelation may very well seem to predicate certain qualities or attributes of God, such as that he is living, self-subsisting, mighty, loving kind, omniscient, all-seeing and all-hearing, reason, for its part, avers that God cannot in reality possess any such attributes, for then he would no longer be perfectly simple, as reason requires him to be, but composite. That is, he would be composed of his uniquely indivisible essence and his alleged attributes or qualities. Similarly, we are told, the dictates of sound reason affirm that God cannot be held to have knowledge of any particular individual instantiated thing in the world, as all such things are impermanent, spring into existence one day, only to succumb to their demise the next. It follows by rational inference, therefore, that God cannot be held to know any such phenomena ephemera, for to know them would imply a relational change, and therefore an imperfection in his knowledge. But does not God himself say in Revelation, "And not a leaf falls, but that he knows it"? Indeed, he does. And so the lines are drawn and the battle is on. So that's the end of the fascinating introductory chapter, giving the historical and intellectual context of Ibn Taymiyyah's struggles. This is a momentous book about a momentous man. As I say, one day, inshallah, I will talk to the author of that. I'm not going to go further into the issues about reason and revelation here. It would take up too much time, and it's probably beyond my pay grade anyway. So one day, inshallah, though, we will address this subject. Until next time.